Hey guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hat Tuesday number 20. Hat Tuesday number 20. Man, what a week, man. I'll tell you, even what a couple like just 24 hours, right? Uh um, as you may or may not know, the channel reached 100 subscribers. We got my man Nathan. Nathan, thank you so much. I'm gonna have to personally thank you. Yeah, now 103 subs. Thanks in no small part to all you guys that have been watching, as well as my man Nathan here, who kind of rallied the troops to make a final push towards 100 and now beyond 100. I am very, very touched beyond words. I mean, to be honest. It's been about what 5.5 months since I started streaming for the first time. It really is nice to be able to get this milestone. Good morning, Josh. How you doing, my friend? Just tickled. Don't even, I got up with such a smile. It's just, yeah. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it. Thanks to you. Thanks to Paul, Robert, Morgan, Ian, Nathan, yourself. Brian Forbes, Steve Heck. Obviously, Steve Goldstein. There's so many folks that have been on this channel, and hopefully I didn't forget anybody. If I did, I apologize. Brad Bowers, that's it. My man Brad, can't forget about him. There's been so many folks here that have appeared and have kind of like donated their time, right? Like this is not a money earning venture, but it's been kind of a passion project, and it might stay that way for a long time. Like I said, I never expected this to be, I've expected at some point maybe to be able to get some kind of ad revenue to get monetized. But even then, it's not like I'm expecting to make a killing off of this. This really is a passion project. And the fact that folks make it a point to, one, take the time out to be on the channel, also to watch the channel and interact with the channel, that really is way more than I could ever hope for. And I appreciate it. And obviously we have the hat that I'm wearing today. This is the Knox green fedora that I've been like teasing for it seems like forever. And I will be giving away this fedora. All right, so and I'll reiterate the kind of the rules. I'll have this video. This video it's live now. Obviously, it will stay in syndication. Now, obviously, I have to have a time limit, but let's just say by Sunday evening, right? So Monday, when I get up, I will see who has left a comment on the video, and let's just for the sake of participation, in your comment, just write what has been your favorite thing, about the channel since you started viewing. It could be a specific series, right? Hat Tuesday, Fedora Fridays. It could be like a specific episode, maybe a certain movie that we featured in Fedora Friday. It could have been a certain guest, right? It might have even been me, right? I mean, however it is, and don't feel the need to pander to me. It's okay if I'm not your favorite thing about the channel, right? This is a community effort, and I fully, expected that at some point, hopefully, I could get some of the personalities that I've seen even before I started YouTube, and say, wow, there's some very interesting hat folks out there. And I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to be able to get some of them to come on this channel. And with the hope, like I said, I always talk about the levers, right? You might end up showing up or finding this channel for whatever reason, but maybe somebody that you've seen, it could have been Morgan, Josh, any number of folks that you've seen here that you resonate with, and you're like, you know what? I like this group, right? And I'll watch it, even if I could just catch, a few words from, let's say, Ian or Robert or Paul or any one of you guys, or even myself, like I said. So yeah, so that'll be the rules for the giveaway, right? And I talked about like the shipping. I do realize that some of you guys are international, and I don't know what shipping costs. It's been a while, a little bit. It seems like the post office is going up and up. I might ask you to cover shipping, but once I do announce, once I do randomly select, right, because it'll be random, right? I'm not gonna pick favorites. As much as it might pay me on some of you guys, because I know some of you guys have been really active, but I have to keep it random. I'll randomly select a comment on Monday, try to reach out to that person in some way. It'll probably have to be through YouTube, right? Right. So if you drop a comment, I will reply to your comment, letting you know that you won. And basically, I don't know, I guess maybe I'll figure out a way to kind of talk about this further. That way we can talk privately. You don't have your personal information out there. But as long as that goes smoothly on Monday, right? Meaning we select somebody and you have to be subscribed, okay? If I don't know you, right? Meaning if I don't know your screen name, I might ask you if you could just drop a screenshot. Please don't be offended. I just want to keep this for subscribers, right? That's kind of always been the attention. And yeah, it should be fun. So assuming everything goes as planned and we get a verified subscriber that's a winner on Monday, I will announce it on Tuesday. Paul, welcome. How you doing, friend?
Hi, Luke. Hi, everybody. So I'm a little bit later than planned.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I love the hat, by the way. Is that a new one?
What is it? I've just tipped my hat to you, as they say.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. A little bit of the etiquette to get the show going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Never mind.
Tell us a little bit about the fedora you're wearing, because I don't know if I've seen that one per se.
Yeah, it's a sort of grey, rabbit fur felt with I picked up with the burgundy color on here and here, and I just think it looks a nice change, really. I mean, when you're wearing some darker colors and you want to lighten it up a little bit, it's just a nice finish. So yeah, slightly different to perhaps some of the colors that I normally wear, but yeah, nice option. And it's belt, and it's probably about a 160, 170 gram weight, so reasonably heavyweight felt. So yeah,
I love it. Looks sharp.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I was just mentioning about here. We finally got over the 100 mark. I think we're at 103. Yeah, thank you, my friend. And like I said, I was basically just expressing my gratitude for folks like yourself and Robert and all the other fine folks that have kind of really been very generous with your time. I know you guys are all busy, and I know that this is not a for even for the folks that are in business such as yourself, Paul. Like, I understand, like the reward that you get from this it's a little bit more internal than monetary, and that just makes it that much more special for me that you guys are willing to go and be on here, because it really is kind of a passion project for all of us.
Absolutely, and I've said it before that I wouldn't have met yourself, Luke, and Ian and Josh and all the others without this channel, and and Robert and so on. It's been a pleasure, and it's thanks. And I mean, having customers and hat friends like Nathan is like, whoa, and some of the projects that they come up with, it just extends your love of making hats and wearing hats, and it's not hurting anybody. It's it's not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, in the UK right now, it's about it's just gone 6 o'clock, of an evening, and so this is the sort of time of day where I start making hats and stuff like that. So I've got quite a few hats to make at the moment. I just had a shipment of big up to Fern Thatcher, by the way. Those guys. This is a package I got from them, and it's full up with 50, just under 50 sweatbands. Leather sweatbands. They're 2-inch wide, really soft. And those guys, they had a breakdown on one of their machines, and they got the part in, and they turned them around for me in less than a day after putting the part on the machine. I just think it's exemplary, really. And to think then it was about 5 days shipment from the middle of America over to the UK. I mean, I can't thank them enough, really.
And they're Missouri, correct? If I remember correctly.
Missouri. Yeah. And it's like FEPSA. I've got a shipment in tow with them at the moment, and again, it's probably about 6 to 8 days to get the shipment from Portugal. So, gone are the days where you've got to, wait 6 weeks to get a particular hat felt in. And one of the things I will share is that I've just ordered a FEPSA color chart, which I've been waiting for a year for, and it's €100 just for their color chart. So this thing better be good, you know.
Yeah,
be good. Anyway, I can share it with you and show what it's all about. We can photograph it and share it with the team or whatever. But it will give everybody, and I suspect Robert would like to see it, and I'm sure that Josh will as well. We'll share the colors there, so at least we'll get some value out of it.
Wow, I love that.
So maybe we'll do an unboxing of when I get the box of felts in. We'll do an unboxing and see what we get, shall we?
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Yeah. You know, you had reminded me, I wanted to get their name. I think at some point in the group chat, you just include their name. That way, you know, I can kind of get the spelling correctly, and maybe we can throw them into the description for Fern Thatcher.
Fern Thatcher.
Fern Thatcher.
Yeah, Fern Thatcher.
Yeah, Fern Thatcher. So
they make leather goods, and I just looked them out as a unboxing. That's a great idea. It'd be like Christmas, Nathan.
Right.
Well, for me, Christmas is every day working with the felts, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And there's some specialties in there, Nathan, which you'd like to see as well, I'm sure. So they're supposed to be coming on the 26th, which I think is next Friday. I don't know, when's the 26th? No, next Monday. So we can I'll hold it over to the Tuesday and make sure that I'm on the show.
Perfect timing. So I mean, for the most part, it's been just you know, and Nathan had, you know, I was talking about that before you joined, Paul, is that Nathan really was the one that kind of started that late push that got me over the threshold. So shout out to Nathan. He has, you know, he's been another blessing on this channel. He's been more of the latter blessings that we've had here on this channel, and he's been remarkable. So Nathan, shout out to you for just making an impact so quickly, and you know, I'm touched by it.
Well, I think big shout out from myself as a hatter, because Nathan supported a lot of young hatters, and from what I understand, quite a few. I know he's supported KTG and myself, and you know, without people like Nathan, we couldn't be here, honestly, because without orders, you don't exist, and without people who've got vision that want to share it with you, and then, you know, the combination of you as the hatter and them as the customer coming up with ideas, it's fantastic, you know, and it's that sort of motion that we get. We're working with people that help us keep going. So big shout out. And as I say, Nathan's pushed me on a number of forums, which I'm very grateful for, because in looking at the statistics of my YouTube channel, you know, 90% of my watchers are actually American.
Wow. All right.
So I'll have to change my accent.
No, that's great. I mean, it's amazing to hear. And like I said, we've always talked about this, Paul, you know, in our various discussions about, like, sometimes these things happen in waves, you know what I mean? And maybe right now the Americans, in terms of viewing your channel, are leading the wave. But these things have a happen of going global. That's just the way we are in the global environment now. So I feel like, you know, the UK is just going to come back really strong very, very soon on your channel. Well,
let's hope so. And I think, you know, let's hope that hats in general come back. I mean, at the moment, we've got a colder than normal weather over here. And I think that that has spurred on a few people to think about hats. But, you know, we're a bit tight. You know, our money needs to give us good value and go a long way. And you know, to get people to spend on things like hats, you know, it's a challenging thing. Although, you know, this week I've had an inquiry for ladies' hats, and so that's a thing that's worth pursuing. But another nice thing is I'm doing some charitable stuff. I've got a friend who's unfortunately terminally ill, so we're doing a charitable hat build for him, for himself. He's I don't think he'd mind me saying, but he's got a cancer in his brain, and so I said, look, I'll make you a nice hat for you to wear and feel comfortable with, cover up his scar and what have you. But also, we're going to put together a hat build and see if we can raise some money along those lines for that. So you know, it's just nice things to do. You know, it's you know, when you're not, because I said to him, look, you know, I'm not in a position nowadays to support, in a big financial way. But what I can do is I can give you my time and convert that into something that somebody else might find worth something, and they'll be prepared to bid for it or whatever. But anyway, I digress really. But that's
I love
one
that.
thing that we can do as a community is help a few other people.
Absolutely, Paul. I think that's something that we had discussed, and I know that we had some discussions about holiday plans. And I know from my standpoint, I didn't get a chance to come and put that into fruition, but I feel like that's kind of like the buildup for, and again, it doesn't mean we have to wait to the holidays to do a nice thing. I feel like I've had opportunities, and some of these I've talked about, some of them I don't talk about, right? Because not all the things, I want to respect the privacy of some of the folks, but at the same time, there are always little opportunities throughout the year. And it could be something like Paul said, your time. And that's very valuable. I always talk about the value of time. That's nothing to sneeze at. And there's these little things where sometimes just sending somebody a text message when you think they might need it, those are very little investments that you can make, and it could really go a long way towards helping somebody out. And it's just one of the things. Don't hesitate to do it, because you never know, right?
We could, our own situations can change. There for the grace of God, as we say in the UK, that we walk the land in a healthy way at the moment, but that can change. So look, it's we've got a lovely community that you've put together. Let's hope we can build it up. And do you know what I found is, I as you know, and thank you for celebrating it, we hit my 500 before Christmas, but I'm now seeing my daily hits going up. I don't know whether this, when you hit these milestones that the guys set on YouTube, thank you, whether that actually affects the algorithm and actually it gets to a larger audience. I just don't know, but I'd like to think that that it does, and that because this is a very specialist thing that we're doing, isn't it? And the audience is very limited for it. So I've got no real understanding of how big it can go, other than looking at and revering in what Kevin has done with KTG. And let's be fair, he's really worked hard to do that. He's jumped
40,000+.
Yeah, and he's jumped out of his full-time job, and he's in there, and he's doing what he's doing. He's making some great hats. People are enjoying it. Fantastic,
Yeah, and can't wait to see the play buttons in the backgrounds. I don't know what that. Did I miss something? Okay, all right. I'm glad I'm not the only one confused. Josh, I'm sure you can explain it for us. It could be I didn't have enough coffee today, but I got to think, Paul, on what you mentioned. I think the algorithm is doing that, because what we do know is it used to be that YouTube didn't place ads on your videos when you weren't monetized, right? And then all of a sudden they started doing that. So even if you weren't monetized, meaning you weren't revenue sharing with them, they are playing ads. So I got to think that means they probably, at least I'm thinking, if they're a company as smart as I know Google is, they're probably messing with that algorithm, because they got to get those ads that they're placing on those videos, even if they're not monetized, the channel, they got to get them to the right eyeballs. So my guess is that the videos are kind of in play, even when you're not necessarily monetized per se.
I think the interesting thing is when you look at the statistical analysis that they offer on YouTube, because I was looking at that again, and my the age group is 95% of my watchers are men, and they are over 55 years old. Right. So it's high disposable income, usually probably family men where the family's left home. It's a hobby, and they have money. So actually, if you were looking to sell a high-end watch or something, a new Mustang or something, then these are the sort of guys that could afford it, and therefore channels like yours and mine are going to be quite attractive, because they're that narrow. But and they've got the audience that as long as they can get the volume up, then they can get a fair play with it.
Josh explained it. If you hit a milestone like 100,000 subscribers, Silver Creator Award, eligibility for a physical silver play button after review. You're right. Thank you for explaining that. I was a little slow on the uptake. And then Josh also said, one day you will hit that. I appreciate that. That just boggles my mind to even think you know, because I know I've seen some creators that have some really big followings, and I'm just like, that's like a magic trick to me. You know, because I'm like, what you could talk about, you know, that somebody's interested, that many folks that will hit that subscribe button. But I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad that those channels, because they provide that kind of that level of like, hey, that's the top level. I'm like, that's awesome, you know, and you're happy for them. And like I said, for us, Kevin, I think he is probably the litmus, you know, in terms of how high this can go. And then, you know, he does hats and guitars, so maybe the guitars, you know, content helps him. But either way, it doesn't matter. It's still hats. You know?
It's great to look at, isn't it? I mean, he's he's charismatic. You know, sometimes it's something that you can laugh at. Another time it's, yeah, there's a great idea there. You know, take a little bit of that. All of us can take something out of his videos, and honestly, it was an inspiration for me. So, you know, hats off to Kevin.
Right.
You know,
that's right. Shout out to Kevin, and Kevin did, you know, he did respond and said that we'll try to meet up in New York somewhere, and maybe at Bencraft. So I love that. Shout out to you, Kevin, if you're watching. Nathan, yes, just to answer your question, I did see a bump in the views. You know, when I went and as the counter was going up. So that was nice. I was watching that last video, the Thomas Crown Affair, and that was probably in the 80s. It's over 100 now. And then I'll tell you this, and this is, I don't know if Ian's around. If you're watching this, that movie, I bragged about this earlier. The movie that you recommended, Public Enemies, it's still by far my most watched video. I forget what Fedora Friday that was, but Public Enemies, it's now over 1,500 views. For a small channel like this, where you know, just over 100 subscribers, that's remarkable. And I don't know, my guess is the algorithm for some reason latched on to that. I don't know what I did special other than say Public Enemies. But yeah, go figure. But yeah, so shout out to Ian for doing that. And again, Nathan, I appreciate your efforts. You know, we have a great topic. This is another topic that was one of the initial 3 that Nathan had suggested, and I thought it was really good. And I'm glad Paul is here, because I'm somebody that I feel like I break a lot of rules, right? You know, and part of that we've already established is probably because, well, maybe because of the environments that I've lived in, right? So obviously, one being in the States, where we are a little bit, I guess we have a little bit more freedom to buck trends, right? But yeah, maybe there could be a variety of reasons for why. Maybe because I'm on, depending on who you ask, I might be on the younger side for hat wearers. Who knows, right? So I'm just short of 50. I don't know if that makes me young for a hat wearer or not. But what I do know is that I've come into this hat hobby kind of late in the game, right? I didn't grow up amongst hat wearers, and I feel like this just very similar to like when I got into guns, right? I didn't grow up with gun, you know, at least not licensed gun holders, right? In New York, right? So don't worry, your secret's safe with me, guys. But yeah, like what you grow up in a very different culture. And then you're getting into it, so you don't always get, depending on who you're around, right? I was lucky enough to find a lot of gun guys, so I got instructed in gun culture, right? But I didn't have a whole lot of hat people, so learning the rules, other than what you see or read about, right? You don't really have the opportunity, I guess, online when you talk to folks like maybe like Robert. And some of the other folks that have been doing this for a long time, you start picking up some of these rules, and then you have to kind of you're going to have presence of mind to implement them, right? Because I always talk about, you know, if I'm ever rude or do something, I want to say 99.9% of the time, it's not intentional, right? I'm trying to not be a rude person. And I think what happens is when somebody sees you breaking one of the rules, they might, right? If they don't know you from Adam, they might say, well, this is probably a very rude person. And it's one of those things where I'm like, for a variety of those reasons, it's good to always know the rules, right? It's kind of like when you go to like the movie The Matrix, right? And I feel like this was said, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was explained to Neo in the movie, to Keanu Reeves' character, that you learn the rules and then you can break the rules. So once you learn them, you can just break them. And I always thought that was something very, very like wise and very like, it's very applicable to a lot of things, right? That's how innovation happens. You usually have folks that will learn a field, right? They'll learn it very well. They'll know what they're supposed to do. And then they'll purposely break that because, well, they want to differentiate themselves, right? It's like, why buy from me? Well, I have to give you a reason, some of those reasons for why you would want to buy my product or service. Right? And in some ways, that's kind of like breaking the rules, right? And you do it with a purpose. So that's why I really love this topic. And, you know, and I'll share like a little graphic here. And hopefully this doesn't come out too small, but what I'll do is I'll zoom in just because ChatGPT allows me to, you know, to kind of work a little smarter sometimes. And because I'm not as, I guess I'm not as schooled on all the rules. What I asked ChatGPT was to kind of come up with certain situations where hat rules might come into play and kind of describe what would be maybe a more archaic, right? Because that's what we've learned, right? Throughout history, just like with a lot of different things, right? Like laws change, the certain rules for what good hat etiquette have changed. So I wanted ChatGPT to kind of help me out and identify some of these rules that, well, how many of these rules are still applicable and how many have changed? And, you know, and it starts off very general, right? Like the more archaic rule would be hats must always be removed indoors without exception. Well, obviously me and Paul are breaking that rule right now. So, you know what I mean? And you know, not because we're rule breakers, especially Paul. I think Paul is probably one of the, you know, more upstanding citizens, but we wear our hats indoors, especially on screen. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, when I was looking at this topic and thinking about it, I thought, yeah, I'm excited about this. And actually, I'm glad you put this graphic up, because in my head it was, well, there are the ways of the world of the etiquette that was set many, many years ago, and then there's the modern interpretation of it. And I think what we're really saying on our modern interpretation, if you like, is that it's what you feel comfortable with and the respect that you offer the people that are around you. Correct. So, you know, if you go into a particular indoor setting, that let's say it was a civic location and you had your hat on. Now, you could walk around that location and wear your hat. However, if other people, if there was business being done and it was a bit more formal, let's say, then you'd take your hat off, you know, and in respect of what might be business being carried out in other parts of that building.
Correct. I'm glad Nathan has now joined us. Nathan, you were lopsided. I didn't know whether I should go like this or not. I was trying to see if I could manually write you, but I'm glad you figured it out. Nathan, well, first of all, welcome, and again, thanks again for the push. I appreciate it, my friend. And Paul brings up a very good point here in terms of, obviously, this whole hard and fast rule of hats must always be removed when indoors is something that I don't think a lot of folks follow, right? At least not online that I've seen. You know, a lot of folks are indoors wearing their hats. And, you know, the more modern take, according to ChatGPT, is removing your hats, let's say in more formal indoor settings. Discretion is acceptable in casual or public spaces. Nathan, I mean, I don't know if it varies out in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about the subject. I mean, you know, I think if you're a baby boomer or older, you know, there's probably the traditional hat etiquette rules, black and white rules that were followed. But I agree with Paul. I think in this modern age, there's a discretion, and it's more, I think, to me, based on principle than necessarily like a black and white rule when you enter this particular building or that particular room, or if you're in this scenario, you do this and that. I think that's out of date. I think right now it's more on principle, discretion. You know, normally, like if you enter someone's home, you would take, you know, traditionally you would take it off, right? Well, if I go to Paul's house and he's got his hat on when he greets me at the door, guess what? Like, I'm going to wear my hat, you know?
Right.
So that's just because because if you take the golden rule, right? Treat others the way that you want to be treated. So if that's showing, if he didn't have his hat on, then I would say, okay, let me take mine off, because that's his home, and that's that's how I would want to be treated.
Right.
So I think it's a lot of principle and discretion, like he mentioned, not necessarily like the black and white rules, and that'll ruffle a lot of feathers when you say that,
Sure.
But I think in this modern age, this so depending on the situation, who's there, where you're at, what's going on. And how you treat others is a big part of it. What your background is, what the culture of the other ones is. So there's a lot of factors that go in. I think that's why it's so based on principle now versus a black and white rule.
I wanted to add there, if I might, Luke, and that is that take the scenario that when the old etiquette was put together, we didn't have shopping malls, for instance. So when you go into a shopping mall, you get out of your car, you put your hat on, you got a few hundred yards to walk towards the mall, and you walk in there. The last thing you're going to do is want to take your hat off and carry it, because you need your hands to carry the shopping that your wife's done, because she's got it in her head. She's going to get lots and lots of bags today, and guess what? You're there to carry them, so you're not going to take your hat off. So it's stuff like that. I think that's in today's world is where we're at.
Yeah. And I think Nathan cued in on something that I definitely, there are certain times where, and I'm using this analogy, and hopefully I'm not abusing the analogy of when I go out with my gun friends, right? I happen to, when I had to go get my license to carry a firearm, I had to go attend a class. And it just so happened that the instructors of the class, is called Basic Pistol, and they took a shine to me and they invited me out to go shooting with them. And I was touched. So I went out there, and they kind of took me under their wing. And, I can remember that we would go out for target practice, and then we'll go out and to eat at a restaurant, some kind of like maybe a burger place. Doesn't have to be a fancy place, but we all gather up. And a lot of us would have our guns. Well, at that time in Virginia, you had to open carry. If you were going to some place that served alcohol, you had to open carry. So there was that idea of, it's a little different rules when you're kind of at a gathering. So I can imagine there might be somewhere out there a gathering of hat wearers, right? And maybe they're going to go out to go grab a bite to eat, something similar to like what I was just describing. In which case, because maybe the purpose of you going out is about hats, maybe that kind of gives a little bit of social permission to kind of maybe break some of the rules, or at least bend them, so to speak. I feel like that is one example right there that I can think of, that I can relate to, that I'm like, okay, yes.
Yeah. I don't know about yourself, but I've found myself in an elevator before now, and I'm quite a big man, both wide and tall. And with a hat on, it can be overbearing, especially if there's quite a few people in the elevator. So I do find that I tend to take my hat off in an elevator, just purely because I feel as though I've taken over the space. If that might sound a bit unusual, but I just feel as though I've taken extra space that perhaps I shouldn't have done, and my hat makes me feel that way. That's really odd, isn't it? But my hat makes me feel that way. But that's an interesting one. I've just thought that through, given that I can just see elevators there and it's saying no etiquette required.
Right. Yeah. I think that kind of may go along with like when you're in like more intimate settings, like this depending on what the setting is, like you may not take it off when you go into let's say a library, but if you were to sit down with your associate at a table, you might then take it off, because that's kind of an intimate space that you're in there. I think about restaurants too, like back in the day, you would walk in, they may even offer to take your coat or hat. And now that's just, that's non-existent. So like I've tried to go in a restaurant, because I know the old traditional etiquette is like to take your hat off in a restaurant, but there's nowhere to put it. And I've tried to get creative, like where do I put my hat, because I know I need to take it off. And now I've gotten to the point, because it's been knocked down and stepped on, and the safest place for my hat is on my head, when I'm in a restaurant, in most cases.
The restaurant, I'm glad you mentioned that, Nathan, because that was one of those things. And I feel like for a lot of folks, maybe church would be another one. The restaurant is such an interesting topic, right? Because, one, again, depends on your company, right? If you're going to a restaurant with a bunch of other hat wearers, if they're keeping their hats on, maybe you're a little bit more emboldened, right? It's a psychological, sociological kind of concept where if you feel kind of de-individualized, right? It's what some people do, some very good things sometimes, but mostly some very bad things they're known for, right? Mob mentality, where people follow the crowd and all of a sudden they feel like they don't have any responsibility because, well, it's called diffusion of responsibility. But, and obviously this is a little not as of a deed here is to keep your hat on, but I feel like if I'm with another group of hat wearers and we're kind of commiserating maybe about our hats, then I'll probably feel a little bit more emboldened. But Nathan mentioned the safest place the safest spot for my hat is on my head. I agree with that so wholeheartedly, because in a restaurant, that might be depending on what kind of food I'm eating, right? Because if it's something that I know is going to splash or have the potential for splashing on me, either be with gravy or it's a soup, then I'm going to be more likely to take my hat off, but not just take it off willy-nilly. I'm going to put it someplace where I can't get splashed on. And I know we had a great conversation in London with Ian about that. Ian has a game plan, and I asked him about it, and I was so interested to get that take from another hat wearer.
I think in the UK, we don't have hat racks or anything like that, the same as yourselves. Right. But I tend to ask to go to a table where my wife and I can sit down, and there are other chairs around the table, so I can actually put my hat and coat on that other chair. Now, in other circumstances, especially if we're going shopping or something, I'll take a backpack, and I've got a backpack that I bought specifically. I've got a couple actually, that specific size that will take my hat and do up, so that in the worst case scenario, I could just put the hat in the backpack and put that under the table in between my legs, so that if it gets splashed, my hat doesn't get splashed, my backpack does. But it's such a shame that we have to do that, because I find myself thinking about, and actually it only happened yesterday. We were having a family meal, and it was going to be a popular venue, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to be able to get a table with a spare chair today, so I'll leave the hat in the car. And so that's what I did, and it worked. Obviously it worked out fine, but you just find yourself thinking about the occasion and the what ifs, really.
I love that. So the next time I'll go in a restaurant, I'm going to say, I need, they're going to say, how many? I'm going to say, well, it's me, my wife, and my hat. So I need 3 seats.
And I mean, you don't usually get a 3, so it might be a 4-seat table.
Yeah, 4. Yeah.
So in which case, that might be like a secret code for your wife, Nathan. It's like, we could do this easily. You could easily have a hat on if you want.
Yeah. I think even with the popularity of the baseball cap, I think that has really caused the blurring of lines with hat etiquette, because you think about, well, maybe is that a formal etiquette only for formal hats? But in reality, it's hats, it's headwear. So like you don't see anybody with a baseball cap trying to apply any kind of etiquette with that. So I think that's really blurred the lines over the last 30 or 40 years for sure.
I agree. And there's actually a great episode of The Sopranos that's very well known. Even some folks that not seen Sopranos may have heard of this episode, but it was a situation where the lead character is Tony Soprano, obviously is a New Jersey mob boss, and he's at a friend, right? His childhood friend, Artie Bucco, owns a restaurant, right? He owns an Italian restaurant, and Tony goes to eat there all the time because he knows Artie, he wants to support him, and he loves the food. And I guess Tony is known for losing his temper, right? And you know, that might be a little cliche for that kind of show, but he cues in at this point on a young couple, and the gentleman's wearing a baseball cap. And I don't know if it was a baseball cap or a trucker cap. Either way, it's some sort of cap. And they're talking about it. And I guess, I don't know what happens. At some point, Tony decides to go there and confront the gentleman. It's a younger guy. And, you know, he's speaking nicely, but like gritting his teeth as in like, you better do this. And the guy is like being very standoffish, like, no, I'll wear it anytime I want. And I think his girlfriend, realizes that this could go really left really quickly. And it's like telling him, hey, you know, why you got to be like that? Because, and then Tony mentions something like, we don't sell hot dogs here. That was his rationale for why he needed to. We don't sell hot dogs here. Yeah. And I thought that was an interesting line. I mean, I had to chuckle. And obviously, I've seen this show well before I became a hat person. But watching that again as a hat person, you're like, wow. It goes to show you that between the lines, Tony Soprano might have no problem if it was a fedora. Right? If you saw a fedora there, he's like, no, they're classing up the joint, right? Maybe that's what he's going to say. But the ball cap, no, we don't sell hot dogs here, kid.
Yeah. Do you know what another interesting thought, Luke, is that, you know, we're talking about hat etiquette, but, you know, there are other overgarments that we wear outside, like gloves, overcoats, and so on. Now, there has been occasion before now where I've gone into a friend's house with an overcoat on and I've sat down, I've taken my gloves off and I've not had a hat on at the time. And they'll say, well, are you taking your coat off? Are you staying? Or, you know, so you know, and that's a sort of etiquette, I suppose, that when you go into somebody's house or when you go into a formal, like a doctor's or somewhere, you take your coat off, or you make yourself similarly dressed to the person that you're meeting with. So why do we just single out the hat as having the etiquette rather than a whole etiquette for our other overgarments? It's an interesting thought.
Maybe it's the ease of removal. I don't know if that is part of it, meaning that it's an easy gesture. Because I mean, what we're really talking about here is kind of like the expectation that you're going to make a gesture of respect, right? Because that's really what it all boils down to. I mean, you could be totally disrespectful. I mean, right? Disrespectful person and take your hat off, right? We've seen that in movies even, where somebody takes their hat off and ends up murdering somebody. Like it has really very little connection, but the idea is that it's a gesture. It's like kind of a that first sign that you are coming with respect. And I don't know why. I can only think it might, without having had a whole lot of time to digest that idea, is that it's because it's so easy to do. At least the perception is.
Or it could be covering the fact that we communicate with our eyes, our mouth, you know, our facial expressions and so on. Yeah. And obviously our voice. Then maybe it's because the hat actually covers up quite a bit of that, and actually you need to remove that to open up a bit more. I don't know. It was just, it got me thinking anyway.
There's another part of this as well. Right? One is the vernacular, right? You know, when you he came hat in hand, right? The idea is that you came with sincerity, right? And the idea of in good spirit, right? There's also this notion that of, like we talked about, it's a lot of our Fedora Fridays. A lot of our Fedora Fridays, right? Especially when we think about something like Rocky, right? Rocky is a very, very sweet man, gentle man. He does, right? He has a job that's not so sweet and gentle, right? Boxing and collecting money for the mob. And he lives in Philadelphia, a very tough neighborhood. The hat, in many ways, was his cover-up. It was kind of his costume, right? To kind of, I'm not as tough as I look, right? And I'm gonna make myself a little tougher. That way, you don't mess with me. And I feel like maybe, right? Because I know glasses have that perception. Some people don't like the idea of sunglasses on, right? I know that because I'm somebody that has glasses that tint up. And I do have dedicated sunglasses, and I do know that a lot of the rules that are set for hats are also for sunglasses. And I have to think about the idea of covering one's visage, right? It's kind of like a barrier almost, where somebody cannot penetrate if you got a hat and glasses on. Matter of fact, a lot of hat folks will recommend, if you're gonna wear a fine hat, don't wear sunglasses with it because you will look off, right? You'll look like an unsavory character. And I break that rule all the time. You've seen some of my photos. I break that rule all the time, but it doesn't mean that other people aren't thinking those things, right? Because of cinema and for a variety of reasons. So I feel like the hat and sunglasses thing, they're connected. And I feel like the face, because, right, it's like the idea that the eyes are the mirror to your soul. When you remove glasses, obviously, if you're a prescription, there's not that same expectation. But if they're sunglasses, even if they're prescription sunglasses, which I have, the expectation is take them off and also remove your hat. I can only think of that, meaning that it's the face is kind of like that special region that you kind of have to come and come unclean or come undone or bring your real self. Otherwise, you're hiding.
Yeah, I had several years ago. There was a lady that that I had a conversation with, and she was upset. There was a scenario we were kind of dealing with at the moment, and she came to me, and she's talking about what was going on, and she's just distraught. And it was outside. I had my glasses on, and she got a few minutes in. She's so upset. And then she just stopped. She says, "Listen, can you take off your glasses?" Because she was really trying to pour her heart out to me, but she couldn't see me. She couldn't see my eyes. So yeah, I learned that day. I'm like, all right, this is, if you really, there's that scenario there was like what you're talking about, where you take your glasses off or your hat or whatever. And again, it goes back to principle, of what situation you're in. And that dictates, like Paul was saying about outerwear or fill in the blank. But if you're in that situation, that scenario, based on principle, what is the act that you're going to do to really show respect and to honor the environment and who you're around, really, and how you respect them?
Yeah. And I saw the same scenario in The Sopranos again. I hate to bring the show back up again. It's top of mind. But there was another situation where Tony's sitting down in the same restaurant, and his former boss, the son of his former boss, who had passed away, comes in, and he has to kind of give him a talking to. And the kid's like a younger kid. He's very angry. He's like a very angry kid. He comes in a leather jacket and with sunglasses on. And he goes, first of all, take the sunglasses off and then sit down, because I'm going to tell you a couple of things that you might not want to hear, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So you can already see that's two instances in the very same show with the very same character about how he views the world. And again, this is a guy that, for all intents and purposes, is a criminal, right? He runs a criminal underworld, but he still believes that respect is a thing. That's a just interesting kind of like juxtaposition there.
Right? I was just thinking about the environment. I'm not a real big Sopranos fan or watch the show, but yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about that environment, and then you kind of think about geographical, if you're in the deep South, or if you're out West, or if you're in the upstate, even geographical background, because you get backgrounds and cultures, and then you've got different age groups and different areas that will dictate too, how, whether there's a black and white hat etiquette or there's a principled etiquette.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that, like, I'm seeing the next thing here that says church or religious services, which I feel like, depending on who you ask, they're like, well, that's no question. And until I thought about it just recently, I would have been in that same camp. I would have said, well, there's no way I would dare wear a hat. And nor should I feel like anybody should in a church or a religious service. But I start thinking about some churches, right? The idea of wearing your Sunday best, right? There's a lot of folks, especially a lot of folks that are in the grow up in a Protestant church, right? I say that because I grew up in a Protestant church, and the idea of dressing up, sometimes that involved a fine hat, right? And sometimes, right, like the hat matches the outfit, and you wear it into service, and nobody says anything because, well, it doesn't seem like a disrespectful thing. It's just somebody trying to dress up their best. Like I said, their Sunday best. And up until I thought of that example, I'd be like, no, of course you remove your hat. You can't do that. But it goes to show you different.
I think you're right. I think in the UK, my grandparents were, I don't know whether you have this church over in America, so forgive me, but in the Elim Pentecostal, and then my mother was in the Baptist church. Yes. And then they put me into a Catholic school. So can you imagine? I was really confused as far as religion etiquette. And, you know, 1 minute it's Hail Mary, the next minute it's Praise the Lord. So you know, I'm not going to go there on religion. Don't worry about that. But the point I wanted to make was my grandmother and grandfather. The one fantastic memory that I have is that every Sunday they would get dressed up, and it included both of them wearing. Grandma wearing a really lovely hat and grandpa wearing a fedora, which gave me the inspiration over the years that I wanted to look like my grandfather. I wanted to be like him. He dressed up in a beautiful suit, and he was a working man, but on a Sunday he'd leveled off with everybody else, you know. And at the end of the day, you just want to feel part of it. So if you're getting grubby because you're a builder or you're a laborer in his case, you know. It was beautiful to see. So he would take his hat off as he crossed the threshold of the street going into the area of the church. It would come off, and then but obviously grandmothers would stay on. They used to pin them on their head, so I didn't have much choice. But that followed in here in the UK. Yeah,
and you mentioned the grandmother, because so the area that I'm in is like if you walk in, a man would take his hat off, a woman keeps it on. And I don't know if that's, you know, a black and white rule, but it's certainly in this area that's what happens.
I have observed that as well. Yeah, that's an interesting thing, and how right. So obviously we are in a modern time where having different sets of rules, you know, for you know, men, women, is kind of there's a backlash against it, and I don't want to get into that because that's not the point of everything here. But you can see where some of these rules that have been traditional could bump into it. If they're still alive, they're going to get some backlash. And I'm thinking of one right now here at the very bottom of this list, national anthem, right? Like for me, I'm somebody that has spent I've been to so many baseball games. I don't even know what that number would be, right? Between high school level, college, and professional games. And I'm somebody that when I used to wear a ball cap, I'd always remove my hat, right? And if I'm wearing a fedora, I'm going to remove my fedora. But there is kind of like that, and we're seeing it in professional sports, of folks bucking the trend. And it's very controversial. Don't get me wrong. It's very controversial. And I don't know, like I said, I can only speak about personal experience, that I'm somebody that I consider myself patriotic, and I've never blinked once about removing my hat. And sometimes, well, actually, I want to say most times, I'm lowering my head, you know, and having my eyes closed. I'm not. It's almost like I was praying, but I'm sitting there taking in the moment. And again, I don't know if that's required. It's just something I felt compelled to do, even before I was a hat person. And so I'm curious about you guys in terms of sporting events.
I think my gut feeling is that you remove, if you've got a formal hat on, you remove the hat, hold it in one hand over your heart when they're playing the national anthem, because otherwise, where do you put your hat? You know, you haven't got anywhere else because you got it on your head. If you have it in your hand, then you start fiddling with it. That's not good, you know. Yeah. So, and the one thing you don't want to do is, I understand it's hat etiquette not to show the lining of your hat, and so therefore, you know, you're taking it off and bringing it straight down to here. That's where I would go with it.
Yeah, I've always, I mean, as I grew up, just that sign of respect, whether you were saluting the flag or not, that most would remove their hats. But I mean, occasionally I'd see that wouldn't happen, but I never thought anything of it if they did or didn't. Because it's just gotten so blurred. I mean, you know, going out to a department store, you know, if you want to be strict, then, you know, gosh, 50 years ago that you got dressed up for that, right? Now that's the things, not to get dressed up and, to go out willy nilly, but yeah, I never thought anything if somebody removed it or kept it on. But again, it's environment. I think it's more principled, application there.
Yeah. Office environments, I'll tell you, that's another one where when I at first glance, I was like, you're not going to wear a hat in the office. But then I'm probably dating myself because when I kind of came in and became a professional, we had casual Fridays, right? Casual Fridays when you can come in with jeans, maybe, right? Unless you were meeting with a client, right? If you knew you were meeting with a client, well, don't come in jeans. What are you doing? Unless the client is one of those folks that you've been working with for so long, where it's like you can have that and feel comfortable doing that. You're not going to sacrifice any perception, right? Some ill perception. But the situation is that in the modern day workplace, you got some workplaces where you wear jeans all the time. Meaning a lot of tech. I know a lot of folks here that work in tech, and they're like, yeah, we wear jeans all the time. So, and a lot of us don't even go to an office, let alone, right? So yeah, there's really no dress code. In which case I'm like, well, then of course you can wear a hat, I guess, right? I just feel like if you're going to be in a situation where I think this is one of those things where like, don't stand out too much, right? If everybody, you know what I mean? Like there's, unless you're comfortable doing that, right? And I don't know if your job is a place where you want to go and make too much of a statement, right? And buck the trend too much. But again, you be safe, right? Like I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. But if you kind of have to follow like the dress code, everybody, when you start a new job, you always kind of err on the side of formality. At least that's what I've always done. When I didn't know the dress code, I try to ask, what's the dress code? That would be a question that I'll ask if, as I start approaching first day in the job. And if I don't get that question answered, or at least not something that I'm comfortable acting on, then I'll err on the side of formal. If I don't wear a suit, maybe I'll wear at least a shirt and tie, and then be prepared with a suit jacket just in case, right? It's like, come in with your hand. It's like, oh, I better put this on. But again, that is different for different environments. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the key word is adaptability. If it's a office of a general contractor, you may have laborers coming in and out that have hats on, and I have some, we have around restaurants, so they may be working in the restaurant and then they come over to the office and they're kind of in and out. But like I would say, like a corporate, if it's a suit and tie, that's probably not the case. I think the key word is adaptability. I learned a few years ago that one of our shareholders, he was an accountant by trade, but he came to work every morning in his cowboy hat, and he walked to the office, and that was him. He had cattle and a lot of land. He's a landowner and an operator, and that was him. So I think the key word is adaptability to the environment for sure.
Yeah.
I think in the UK, it's quite rare to see somebody wearing a hat at work outside of a uniform hat. Like if you were at McDonald's, they wear hats, or if you were on a building site, you wear health and safety, crash hats for obvious reasons. But I think what I find is if I wear a hat and I've got a jacket and trousers on or something, I'll use it as if I'm looking at the environment and I'm looking at why am I going to see them, and is this a power play? Or is this something that I want to open up the conversation? Because I know that as soon as I walk into a room with a hat on, especially if it's a different color, if it's brown or if it's black, most people have seen brown and black hats. But when you start getting into the beiges or something like this, or whatever, you get the question, well, that looks pretty smart. Do you mind me asking where you got that from? And it breaks the ice. You then go off starting to bond in talking about a different subject that is outside of the work environment. Sometimes it can be a really good icebreaker. So I have used it to my advantage in that respect. And the other way is, of course, when you go in suited and booted and you're dressed up with a fedora and you've got a blooming great overcoat on, you're not going to mess with that person.
Right. Correct.
They're looking as though they're pretty in charge.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, I worked remotely, and I still asked my supervisor if it was okay to have my hat on. She was really supportive. Actually, she thought it was really cool that, you know, he said, I think you're just going to become the Hat Research Ninja. That's what we're going to pretty much call you. And that pretty much became my reputation. And to the point where certain times there have been like certain client meetings where if it's a new client that I hadn't worked with before, I would remove the hat. And then the folks I work with, they say, why do you do that? It's like, I think I like the hat. It's become part of you. And I'm like, well, I just wanted to be safe, you know?
Hey guys, I'm gonna jump off. I did want to get on and chime in, and I'll keep watching and try to throw some comments on there. But I love the format here with all these different scenarios. So I'm looking forward to the continued discussion. I did want to tell you, I got my Sertelli 10X Beaver. They don't come out and release. I think this is about a 40% Beaver and 60 Rabbit.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to kind of show you what I did have on today. But I thought it was fitting because if you talk to some cowboys, man, that the hat etiquette, that's some serious business. So pleasure to see you guys. Looking forward to more discussion.
Sounds good. Thank you, Nathan. You have a great day, my friend.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Thank you, Nathan Tuck. Man, again, thank you to Nathan for joining us. You know, and I feel like, you know, for a lot of these topics, we're probably going to come to the same conclusion, to be honest. Funerals and weddings. I mean, funerals, again, as a psychologist, funerals and weddings are those things where we call strong situations, right? I also put churches in that same category where you're going to feel a lot more pressure not to express individuality at a wedding, at a church, and at a funeral. Again, doesn't mean people don't do it, but I feel like those are like really powerful situations. And I feel like weddings are even more so because sometimes you kind of know, like if certain weddings, even if you're not part of the part of like the groom's, whatever, a groomsman or one of the bridesmaids, there's still some expectations, right? And you see like some folks, for a lot of folks, it's their perfect day, right? So, and that comes down to how even some of the guests come dressed. And I hate to like do this but I know it exists, right? That's why that term bridezilla exists, where somebody is so controlling, and unfortunately, they don't usually say groomzilla. They'll say bridezilla because that's the stereotype. It's the female that's getting married that is so controlling over every little detail. And I have heard situations where they're like, somebody will get a note that's like, "Hey, you're invited, but please don't bring so and so, and don't wear such and such." I mean, Paul, what do you think?
I think you're right. I mean, my son's getting married in April, and already, you know, my wife and the family are already talking about their outfits and the colors and what they're going to wear. And you know, and it at the end of the day, it is the day for the bride and the groom, and I think everybody should respect that and you know, and act accordingly, really. But the one thing I wanted to table, actually, because with funerals, weddings, and church, it's obviously surrounded with religion. And one of the things that I've noticed, because I do sell quite a few Borsellino hats, and obviously the Jewish community, the men wear Borsellino hats and bigger brims and so on. And I wasn't quite sure what the etiquette was there, because you see some gentlemen with very expensive sort of fur hats, and you see you know, do they keep them on in church? Do they keep, because you see them at weddings, and you very rarely see them, I'm not from the religious faith of the Jewish community, and I don't have a Jewish community near to where I live, so you know, I'm not very well informed. But because of the hat situation, and I'm just interested to know where that fits with them. Do they follow the same etiquette as the general hat wearer, or do they have their own standards that they adhere to?
Right. Yeah. these are great questions. And again, this is not like the whole point of this episode is not to create finality here, right? Because we're not in a position to dictate what's right or wrong. So a lot of this is going to probably generate more questions than maybe even answers. But I agree, Paul. I mean, I'm for weddings. I'm like, as much as I like wearing a hat, if I was invited to a wedding, like I have a friend that's going to get married very soon, and if he or she and his wife and his future wife do not want me wearing a hat, of course I can do without a hat for a ceremony, right? Or as long as they don't want me wearing a hat, because I do know that some of these things are photographed, and maybe they don't want to break out, right? So the last thing you want some bride to be like, well, everybody was just looking at this person's hat and not at my outfit. You know what I mean? And again, I know that sounds a little shallow, but I understand because, well, there's so much money that goes into some of these weddings.
Yeah.
And so much planning and so much like detail work. And I'm somebody that appreciates, right? Even if like I can be detailed oriented, but I do know that there are so many folks that are way more detail oriented, and I respect that quality. And the last thing I would want to do is come in, and ruin that and break out the plan, right? Yeah. And the other thing here, there are two categories here: meeting women and just speaking with someone. And I thought that was very interesting because in movies you see that so often, right? When somebody removes their hat, especially in the gentleman in the presence of a woman. And according to ChatGPT here, there's no such etiquette, but I feel like that does still exist. And I don't know if it's different. Like I don't see it as often here in the US, but maybe Paul, you can opine about the UK.
I think it brings up a very good point. And for me, the point is that if you go into a bar, a restaurant, an exhibition or something where you know that you're going to converse with people, then I think you make a decision really about how, how you're going to respect that. I mean, an interesting one is that occasionally, I'm sure you do as well, with work, I go around exhibitions and, I'll wear a hat because it's cold out and so on coming to the exhibition, but then I might put it in my backpack going around the exhibition just because you want to converse on an even level. But if I was in a department store, for instance, and I was laden down with goodies and I was talking to somebody, I wouldn't necessarily take my hat off, but probably acknowledge in some sort of way, But it is a tricky one, really. But when you've got a situation where you're talking to an assistant in a shop and they're helping you, then you wouldn't take your hat off because it's part of, you're just conversing over that. But if it's somebody that you know and you're getting into a conversation about your family or your work situation or so on, then you might take your hat off. It just how you feel, really.
Yeah, agreed. Completely agree. And it's one of those things where, and again, this is where, right, know the rules, know when to strategically break the rules, because I'll tell you, if you're somebody that is trying to court a young lady, and I wish Ian was here because he'd probably be able to opine because he's got special experience in this area as well. But it might be an opportunity right? So it's like, we talk about the idea of your business standing out, right? When you're courting somebody, you also want to stand out within a certain respect, right? You kind of want to say, well, I'm the guy or gal you want to be with, right? And if you're a gentleman, like I know that we have folks here, not everybody's married. Some of you guys may be trying to pursue somebody. If you're a hat wearer, that might be a good way, right? That might be the only thing you need to do. And you probably might have the attention, right, of that person that's looking at you, and you're standing out because you just thought to remove your hat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a story that people in general want to know. If you're wearing one, why are you wearing one? What's it all about? It's there's a point of interest there, if you like.
And that's the thing. Like I said, if you need even just the most shallow reason to wear a hat, being able to pick up for the guys out there that are interested in picking up the ladies, it's an instant conversation starter. I mean, I talked about it so often about folks and about females that will go and ask, who you remind me of, or and then it'll be like either a relative, right, something that's near and dear to them, or it'll be some kind of star, right? Like I joked about that just recently. I went out thinking I was looking more like Rocky, and they were like, "Well, you look like Edward James Olmos or Mark Anthony," and I'm like, "Hey, it's still not bad, right?" Like, for me, I'm like, I'm okay with that, I could do worse. But it's one of those things where I'm like, the whole point, the biggest hurdle in meeting new people is getting that conversation started, like a genuine conversation, other than like, some cheesy pickup line like, "Hey, you come here often?" Something that person has probably heard so many times and you don't stand out. But if they come to you because you're wearing something, right? Like again, let's be honest, leather and felt, we've talked about it, those are luxury goods. As a guy, these are luxury goods, and women know this, right? They also like felt. They also like leather. So when they see a fedora, I think that's an instant. If there's some kind of spark, any kind of interest, they're going to start the conversation with you.
It's a very good point, Luke. And I think the other thing that I would like to table on that one is that I'm sure you're the same in America, but when we've got jobs that are being chased by individuals who are unemployed or want to move their job. We get maybe 200 people going for one job. Now, of course, you get narrowed down to maybe 10 people that might get interviewed. But if you get down to the last sort of 5 or 6 where you have a one-to-one interview, the chances are then that all of those 6 people could technically do the job. So what they're looking for is, would you be a good member of the team and contribute to the culture of the business? And they're looking at, would you be a good brand ambassador for the business? Bearing in mind, if you're in a role that's actually going to be dealing with customers or dealing with other suppliers or presenting their brands to the public. Now, by wearing a hat, you're naturally elevating yourself above the other 6 because they're going to remember. Do you remember that guy was wearing a hat? You blah, 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 blah. And, and they said, well, that's another tool that he could use when he's going in to see our clients. And you know what? It's got a bit of power behind it. So I'd love to do a test somehow of somebody that's going in for a job interview and provide them with a hat and see how they get on. But when you're wearing a hat, you do have to wear it with confidence, don't you? I mean, you and I know that, but if you, I guess it's like a gun. We don't have guns in this country, as you know, but you don't pussyfoot about a gun. You're going to be there. You're going to hold it properly. You're going to aim it at the target, and you're going to pull that trigger. And it's a bit like a hat. You've got to walk high and tall to command respect with it. But I do think that something like that scenario would, in fact, work in somebody's favor.
I agree, because and part of and if I had to explain it psychologically, right? The example that we provided here, that if you remind somebody of somebody, let's say somebody famous, we do know there's a principle called familiarity breeds liking, right? So the more exposed you are to a stimulus, the more you come to like that stimulus. And if you remind somebody of somebody that's, even if it's somebody neutral, right? So the people that they tell me I look like, I happen to be a huge fan of Mark Anthony as well as Edward James Olmos, but not everybody is. But just the fact that they know who they are, you already brought yourself into kind of a unique space. And I think the same thing would happen during an interview. He's like, did anybody notice that guy look like Mark Anthony or Edward James Olmos? And like, it's like, I'm not a big fan of that. But all of a sudden you become, wow, we could have Edward James Olmos working for us, or Mark Anthony, or whoever, or Rocky. Maybe Rocky will work for us, right? It's like, I don't know. And again, I don't want to tell somebody something that's not going to work, but I feel like that is a sound psychological principle about why it could work in your favor, because Paul is right. The majority of jobs out there, right? There's only a certain level of, let's say, because we do know that cognitive ability is important. But if anybody that's ever been an employee, or has ever employed anybody else, they know that cognitive ability is only part of the picture, right? So yes, we generally want smart people around us, yes. But for a lot of jobs, it takes more motivation, right? The idea of getting up in the morning and being reliable. Also, beyond being reliable, there's also integrity. There's also the idea of likability. What's your personality like? Are you a people person, right? If you're in a customer-facing position, then you want somebody that has a good rapport, is able to build an instant rapport. And maybe that hat is like you demonstrating already that you can build instant rapport with anybody. Because, oh, if we think he looks like Rocky, then everybody else is going to think they look like Rocky. And I'm not saying Rocky's the one you want, but I'm just saying, if they think that you look like somebody, well, that might work in your favor. So I feel like that's got legs, and it'd be interesting to see if somebody's already done that. If so, I'd love to read that paper. And two, and if it hasn't been done, how do I get somebody? I have some friends that do research. It'd be nice to be able to like nudge them, like, hey, you know, is this something that you think you can pull off? You know?
Sure. Yeah. Cool.
What else? So yeah, I feel like all of these. Let me just make sure I don't. Military. Wow. Talk about strong influences. You know, in the military, that might even trump all of these other ones, right? I mean, especially if you're someplace like the Marine Corps. We talked about the Marine Corps in the video I did with my brother. If you're in boot camp, you can't stand out at all. They're trying to mold you into like being, you're right, part of the group, and right, it's being the we before the me. And I feel like a lot of that stuff, out of maybe probably self-preservation, you better be in line, right? Like if you're gonna wear a hat as part of your uniform, it better be the right hat, and it better be worn up to standard. So I don't feel like, you know, I feel like that is, like I said, back into that group of strong situations. I find it very difficult to think that somebody would be in a military environment and they could just break the rules.
I think that's an interesting one, because one of the reasons that we read that hats became less popular was because of the wearing of hats as a uniform during the war, basically during the 1939-45 war. And when they came home from the war, a lot of folks didn't want to wear the hats because they wore hats every single day when they were in the trenches, so to speak, or they were in the war. And I sort of get that would evoke, you know, memories of that sort of environment. But certainly, you know, over in the UK, and I'm sure in America, you know, the way that the military conduct themselves is exemplary, and they have a code for everything. And I'm sure there's a hat code for everything.
Yeah, and I think these last two here, like the military and authority figure, because I think they kind of go hand in hand, at least in my mind, right? There is the idea of saluting your superior officer, and sometimes that also removes, like if you're coming into the office of a superior officer, you will remove your hat. Very similar, like here, authority figure, whether it's your boss, or, right, let's say the president is in town, right? I know, you know, the president is a divisive figure for a lot of folks, especially our president. But I'm still somebody that, like I said, regardless of how I feel about I respect the position. I respect it so much that if the president were to show up, I'm going to remove my hat, because, again, regardless of what your politics are, the position commands authority. And I feel like that's, again, another strong situation, maybe not as strong as some of these others, right? Because it could be your boss is very casual and things don't have to be like that. But for myself, maybe I'm a little bit more old school that way. If it's my boss, and, you know, depending on what boss, I've had many bosses over the years, there are certain ones that I'd be like, yeah, I'm taking that hat off. And others, maybe I'd think about it, you know?
Yeah.
But in general, yes, take it off. You know, one thing here that's kind of like, we talked about this, and we even led with this, and this is kind of why I want to maybe we'll close this out unless Paul has anything else for hat tipping, right?
One thing I wanted to share with you at the end of when you've
you want me to just keep going for now?
Just keep going, do what you're doing. Before we leave, there was an experience I've had that I wanted to share. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good, Paul. Yeah, hat tipping, man. Wow. This is one of those things where I'm like, it says here optional, right? And right, required for most greetings, for greetings for elders and for ladies, right? That's the archaic rule. And then here it's optional. This is one of those that I've been doing this a lot more often lately because this has been a subject of our conversation. This goes in line with that suggestion that I made before about how to stand out in a nice way, right? If you want to be make a certain impression on somebody, I think the hat tip, and it doesn't have to involve you removing your hat. I feel like people know even the hat tip, even folks that don't know about hats per se, I think they recognize it because of cinema or for whatever reason, they recognize the hat tip. And I think that's one of those nice things that I hope makes a big comeback, right? So we talked about the hat wearing making having a resurgence. If that is true and that does happen, I'm hoping the hat tip goes with it because I think it's such a nice touch.
Yeah.
Paul, what do you think?
I think it is. I mean, look, I suppose deep down I'm a bit of a traditionalist anyway, and I think that you know, when a culture loses its tradition and its values, it's a slippery slope. And so bringing back the odd one or two that actually is quite nice to do. I mean, just, you know, why not? You know, I mean, sometimes, I mean, I perhaps only do it to other people that wear hats, and that's a rare occasion. And just acknowledging the fact that they're wearing a hat, but otherwise it's a bit unusual in the UK, you know. But I'd love to see it come back. It's just another way of expressing, you know, a good and opening a conversation, of course.
Yeah, it's an acknowledgement, and I think this is another one. I think I see a lot more Western hat wearers do this, but I feel like it's in that same vein of the hat tip. I always treat it the same as a hat tip. I don't know if folks that if Nathan was here, if this is something that's more predominant among the Western hat wearers, but I also think of it in the same line. It's a hat tip. And it's just the same as, you know, doing this or removing your hat, you know, and so Nathan, you have to opine, maybe Josh as well as to this, whether it means the same exact thing as a hat tip. But yeah, I agree. This has been a great discussion. Paul, I know you said you had an anecdote. I want to make sure I give you the floor.
Yeah, first of all, big shout out to Josh because he helped me with a hat block again this week. So really appreciate his help. Secondly, I had a customer this week that bought a hat off my website. And what normally happens is that people find me one way or another through YouTube or through Google or what have you. And then they'll reach out to me because they feel as though they want to either ask about how do I measure my head, how do I do this, how do I do that. So it's quite unusual that somebody will just buy a hat without contacting me. And this gentleman bought a hat, and I sent it to him and obviously acknowledged thanks and so on. And he got the hat and it really didn't suit him. And it was too wide in the brim. It was slightly too big in the size, and it was too high in the crown. I think it was his first fedora that he wanted. So he wanted to return the hat for a refund. But in fact, I managed to get hold of him and say, look, you've obviously made the decision to buy a hat. Why don't we do a Zoom call and have a chat through what you're trying to achieve, what you want to use the hat for? You know, let's have a look at your body frame. Let's have a look at your, you know, what I'm looking at, body frame and how to hold your shoulders and that sort of thing. And he was a gentleman where I don't think he watches the channel, but it's not derogatory. But I think his shoulders slant down a little bit. He's not as big a frame, and so you know, he needed a slightly smaller crown, slightly tighter brim, you know, and a different shape. Now, so the big shout out and I'm going through and rebuilt. I've actually rebuilt him a hat, and we'll exchange it over. And if he doesn't like that, I'll give him his money back. But it's the first time it's happened in about 400 hats that anybody has sort of got it wrong. So it's not a challenge. It's a challenge more than a problem. And it's really acknowledging the fact that anybody who wants to get into wearing a hat really ought to talk to their retailer or their hatter and have a session where if they're going into a shop, try on several hats. Get to see what type of style, shape, size fits them. And you know what? no, believe it or not, no two hatters' sizes are the same.
Right.
You put a Borsellino hat on, it's always smaller than a Lock and Co. You're always bigger than a Christie's or whatever it might be. So try them on. And it's only when you get to people like myself that are actually custom making the hats that you can get a true to size, because we're making them true to size,
Right.
And then we're also custom making them if they make them for themselves. So that's all I really wanted to do, was share the fact how important that is.
Yeah, I love that.
I wanted to, and that's a great account, Paul. And I'm trying to think, how can we frame that within a topic? But anyway, I did want to jump in because I wanted to ask you something, because I feel like you're my exclusive hatter, to be honest with you. So, I don't have a hat conformer. Not very many people do.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to come up with either to make arrangements to use one or to buy one and do it. But here's what I would like to do. I would like to get a conformer, get the exact shape of my head, and build the block, that fits, and send that to you, so that you would have that my head shape insert for the hats that you make for me. And I just wanted to kind of run that across to you. Like, how would something like that work?
Just 2 seconds and I'll show you. Where is it?
Love it.
This is called a French curve, I believe, and you can buy this for about £8 or £10 on Amazon. Okay, and what it is I don't think you can see that very well, but it's sort of got a core in there, which is a bit like, it feels like lead. It's reasonably heavy and it's very easy to move. So I've been trying to buy a proper conformator for years, but haven't been able to find one in the UK. And I don't really want to spend money on something in South America that's never going to turn up, etc. So what I've done is I've used this, and I basically get clients to put it around their head, and then can you see that there? I've got the one on top of the other, and then I just hold them in the middle there, and then I move the French curve up and down.
Right.
And that is now the shape of my head. Okay. Now, here's one I did yesterday with a gentleman that came to my house. So I then took this and put it on a piece of paper, and I drew his shape. And if you can see, there's just a slight kink here on this side.
Right.
Yeah. And the front is slightly narrower than the back. So now I can build that into this 18mm plywood, which is here. And what I've agreed with this gentleman is that I'll have one of these, and I'll make one for him, so that I've got it for any further hats that he wants me to make, but he's also got it to be able to put inside of his hat when he's not wearing it. Because what he said was he'll wear his hat maybe once or twice a month, and then this will keep the hat in perfect shape for when he wants to put it on and take it off. So that's it took me a while, and I'll tell you who put me onto that was, and to be fair, it was Robert. So hats off to Robert. In terms of inspiring me to go down that route. I will get a conformator, and in fact, I know Josh is working on something at the moment, and we may well do a 3D one. But at the moment, I'd love to get one of the traditional ones. But for some reason, they've gone from £1,500 to about £5,000. And I'm not sufficiently moneyed to be able to afford £5,000. I'd have to sell one of my cards to buy that. And I'm not doing
So, it's funny because Luke, was it Friday when we were talking about that, like getting the block to put in there as a storage? But anyway, so French curve, and then and you said an 18mm block, and then just drill a hole in the middle of it. Yeah. So would it work best if I make the block and then ship it to you, or should I just do the drawing and ship that?
just do the drawing and ship it over to me, because then as long as it's an A4 piece of paper you've put it on, then I should be able to print it off here. I can cut around it. So all I'm going to do, Nathan, is I've literally drawn that. I'll cut round that.
Yeah.
Spray mount it onto the ply, or actually no, I'll just offer it up to the plywood, draw around it, and then I'll draw 2 of them, and then just drill it and jigsaw it out, and that'll it's good enough. It's not as good as the £5,000 conformator,
right?
But
right.
You know what? Everybody that I've made those for and subsequently made them hats have gone, yeah, no, that is, I've never had a hat that I've put on like that. And
well, I tell you, you've convinced me. I tell you that I'm so glad I jumped on and asked you the question, because I'm gonna go look for that right now, actually, and try to get that over to you. Yeah, I think that's. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, we can put it into the next build for you, Nathan, and I'll put together a video for you and show you. But it's how far do you go? And what value do you put on? Because I was talking to the gentleman yesterday. I said, look, I normally charge £40 for doing this because it's my time. It's not so much the material cost, but my time of doing it. You're talking half an hour. By the time you've got up out your chair, you've got into the garage, you've drawn round, you've got the saw out, you've cut your finger off, you've put a plaster on it, all those sort of things. Because I'm not particularly good at DIY. Anyway, so what charge do you put on that? But it's, from my perspective, I can say it's £40 value. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do it for £25 for you, and it's given them some added value rather than undermining the prices of my hats, which I think are quite competitive. Then I'd much rather add value rather than discount.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
It's the old adage. It's a no-brainer. Yeah, it's a no-brainer, and I think I was going to mention like a 3D printer, because I've seen like you can get the file, I think, for $30 or $40 US, and then of course you buy the material and you do the 3D print. So I think that's a good project for you if you're going to invest and kind of go in that direction, is do a 3D print version as far as being cost effective. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that method, and I'm going to try it out. Let's see how it goes.
Sounds good. Nathan, I had a question for you. We just talked about hat tipping, and then I mentioned here, because I know Sam Elliott has done this before. He also plays a lot of Cowboys. He does also this. And I don't know if this is just the same as, have you seen this before? And is it the same as the hat tip?
Yeah, I've seen that. I think Sam Elliott is like one of the coolest jokers on the planet, man. So you know what? If he can turn, if that's his hat tip, I tell you what. I mean, if you're doing that, you're doing something good.
Good enough
but
for me,
I do see, I do see, like in the Western culture, I think that's still very, very relevant in that culture there. Yeah. Generally speaking, I just don't see it very often, but I think more so in the Western sphere. Gotcha. Yeah.
All right. Just wanted to clear that up. I just want to make sure that I wasn't propagating ignorance, because I've seen it. I'm like, that's got to be the same as a hat tip, but I see more folks that, again, Sam Elliott and a few other folks, will do this. And I'm like, okay, that's got to be, maybe that's their version of a hat tip. And it's very easy to do. I'm like, you know what I mean? It's even easier than doing this. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess that's, I'm just going to do that. Hopefully somebody can confirm or deny.
No, I think, Sam Elliott does it. You're not walking in bad footprints right there.
Yeah, I wish I had Sam Elliott's voice, let alone the whole look. Yeah.
Oh,
just
classic,
the voice
classic.
I want.
Yeah, classic. Well, thank you guys. Yeah, I'm going to go and try to get some more work done. And such a pleasure. Great topic. Great discussion. Like you said earlier, I don't know if it's more questions than solutions, but the topic is just fantastic. I think this has been just a great Hat Tuesday today. Paul, always good to see you.
You too.
Luke,
thanks.
have a good one. Keep it up, man. Congrats again on the 100 subscribers. Now we're going to work towards 150.
Yeah, I love it.
Yay.
I love it. My man, you said you heard it here first. 150. Shout out to Nathan. Paul, thank you so much for sharing. Like I said, I think this was one of those no-brainer shows I think we've got some really good suggestions. This is some of the things that I'm like, I feel like we have these conversations piecemeal, but now we at least have, for those folks that find their way to the channel, a dedicated discussion on the topic. Obviously, we can pick it up again anytime, but I feel it was a good show.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Just a thought. People like myself, I thought Nathan knew about the sizing and so on. Is it worth putting in the calendar for a discussion about size and sizing of hats? And in fact, you can get a standard size off the shelf. You can get a custom size where the hatter will just make a hat without conforming it. Just if your hat measures, your head measures 56.5, then we'll make a 56.5 hat for you. And then the third option is, of course, what we've discussed, which is doing the conformator, making it actually to your shape, which is much more important for the Western felt hats because they're so much more stiff than the soft, more pliable dress and lightweight felt. So maybe that's a thing for the
that sounds good. Yeah, Paul, I don't know, again, like I said, I shared the calendar. I think I blocked out that week that I'm gonna be in Puerto Rico, because I don't want to plan to do a show and then not be able to come through. If I happen to be able to get on live, then I'll do that. But yeah, find an open spot there, and then and if you have trouble accessing that, just like I told everybody else, I know I have your email address. Just let me know. I'll just add that. Matter of fact, I'll just do that. I'll take your email address and add that. That way you have access for sure. Because I think that calendar is supposed to be access to anybody that has the link, but it seems like not everybody's getting access. So
cool. Okay. Well, look, great show. Really enjoyed it. Have a great few days. And Friday, I'm going to be away on business, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to join you. But hopefully next Tuesday. In fact, I don't know where my diary is. In fact, let me just check my diary to make sure, because we did say I was going to do that unboxing, so I don't want to promise something and then not be able to deliver. Yeah. So let's just have a look. Sorry to keep you waiting. Yeah, no, I can. Let's do that. So I will have checked the boxing from an insurance point of view, opened it up. But let's then open it up on the show, and we can show you exactly what we get from FEPSA and how we get it. So yeah,
I love it. Looking forward to, my friend. In the meantime, safe travels, and we'll see you. We'll see you at the next one.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Paul. Yes. And then Nathan says, "I'll be in the Dominican Republic first week of February." All right. Sounds good. That won't be that far. We're like neighbor islands. I had a great time in the Dominican Republic a few years back, so I have no doubt you'll enjoy the island. Yeah, what a great show! Like I said, thank you to Nathan. Thank you to Paul for being on screen. Thank you for Josh, my man in the chat here. Also Nathan in the chat, and all you guys that are tuning in right now. If you missed the early part of the show. We were celebrating the 100s, passing the 100 subscriber mark. So as I've been talking about in all the episodes, I will be giving away this Knox fedora. This is a Knox fedora built in Canada, right? I believe it's Biltmore, right? The famous hat company Biltmore licensed this from. I'm assuming. If it wasn't Hat Corporation of America, then whoever came after Hat Corporation of America, but it could have been them because it was during probably the 50s or 60s, according to my research. My guess is more the 60s based on everything I see about the fedora. So let's just say it's a Knox fedora built in Canada in the 1960s, based on what I can gather. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys a chance to win this fedora. What you got to do is drop a comment, and not just any comment. If you're subscribed, you'll be eligible, right? Just drop a comment telling me what you enjoyed the most about our YouTube channel, right? And if you didn't enjoy anything, then you'll feel free to tell me that. Just say, hey, I want to enjoy it, but I just don't, and this is what you can do to make it more enjoyable, to actually make it enjoyable. Hopefully we don't have too many of those, but if you did enjoy something, again, or somebody, or a certain topic, a certain episode, just put that down there. And then I'll keep that open all the way through Sunday evening, right? So when I get up on Monday, I'll check out, the current list of comments that are eligible, right? If I don't recognize you as a subscriber, please don't be offended, but I might ask you to just verify, that you're subscribed. You can just send me a screenshot or whatnot. I just want to make sure that I'm rewarding the subscribers here. What we'll do is we'll work out, right? We'll work out a way for you to send me your contact information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that list. I'm going to randomly draw a person, a comment out of there. I'll reply to your comment saying that you won this Knox fedora, and then we'll follow up to come up with details about how to get it to you. Like I said, I might ask you to cover the shipping. All depends on how costly the shipping is. But we'll work something out. And if you don't want it, this is a 7 1/4, right? I'm like a 7 1/8. This kind of has a little bit of looseness here. So I think it's a genuine 7 1/4, right? If it doesn't fit you, or you just rather give it to somebody else, then we can do that, right? You just have to give me that person's contact information, and we'll work that out. But this could be, like I said, I don't know. When I'm wearing it, it actually looks much nicer than when I was showing it on the video, I think, from me. But again, I'm a stingy rim kind of guy. So, this might be your first stingy rim. Who knows? This might be the one that starts it all, right? Or it could be your 100th stingy rim. It does have some moth bites. But like I said, I've had this hat for many, many months, probably closer to a year now, right? Since when I first bought it. And I haven't noticed any new moth bites, right? I actually have, thanks to Kevin Gerber, I have his concoction of peppermint, and lavender, right? I feel like that's a really great concoction that I got. I got that tip from Kevin Gerber. Shout out to you, Kevin, for that hat tip. And that keeps the moths, at least the new moth bites, away. At least it has been for me so far. So thank you all again. Thanks to all the folks in my in my Good Looks network, right? Unboxing, I know, right? You gotta love that. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks to Nathan, thanks to Josh, thanks to Paul, thanks to Robert, all the folks, Ian, Morgan, Brad, all the folks in the Good Looks network, Brian Forbes, all you guys helped me get to this point, and I'm really appreciative. And just like Nathan says, we'll do a march to 150 and hopefully beyond. But if not, I'm just content as can be, right? This has been much more than I could hope to imagine. So thanks for rocking with me. And as always, like I said, you just gotta, the one thing you gotta do, right? Like the one thing you gotta do, right? Or we'll get Art the Clown after you, right? And Art the Clown's pretty brutal. So, he wears a hat, but this is not a nice guy. So shout out to Art the Clown, but don't stop what you're doing. We'll say Art the Clown, but he better be good. Anyway, he better not do anything wild to you. All he's gonna do is make sure that you hit the subscribe button. And the one thing you definitely make sure of is that you always stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody.